I'm Cheryl Gray McDonald. It's March the 17th, 2016, and I'm in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, speaking with Mr. Herscal Williams. Good morning, Mr. Williams.
Good morning.
How are you?
Well, I just been to the dentist, had my teeth cleaned, so I feel pretty good.
And you've got your green shirt on, too. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, that's right. It is St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
That's right.
And I'm not wearing my green.
I was talking to my wife about it out there, and I was up in Boston one time when they had St. Patrick's Day, and I think they celebrated it more than anywhere in the United States. They had a lot going on St. Patrick's Day up in Boston.
Okay, well that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful St. Patrick's Day today, anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we wanted to continue with your interview from the one I did before, and we wanted to talk a little bit about the CCC camps. The Civilian Conservation Corps came about in March of 1933.
Right.
Was established to provide work relief to men ages 18 to 25. And in North Carolina, apparently they had 66 camps. This was the Civilian Conservation Corps. It was part of Roosevelt's New Deal plan, and it put millions of young men back to work in America.
Yeah, there were a million young men in there during the time from 1933 to 1942. That was when it was disbanded in 1942. After the war started, I guess the men going into CC camp, they wanted to go into service somewhere or another, serve their country in the service.
I see. Okay, well that was a good thing to do. At what age did you join the Conservation Corps camps, and where did you work?
Okay, well, I'll begin with the beginning, how I got in. There was a guy named Ike Davis. I think his name was Isaac Davis, but they called him Ike Davis. He was sort of he lived in Mateo, and I think he was a recruiter for people in Dare County. Well, a friend in Avon, and they were real good friends, Calvin Meekins. And so Calvin got myself and a guy named Irvin Price and McKinley Price a chance to go into CC camp. Well, when we had to go, we spent the night in Nag's Head, and early in the morning, Mr. Davis came and picked us up and carried us to Washington, North Carolina, where we had to enlist, I guess, or get sworn in. I don't know exactly what, but I think it was all about. And after they had the swearing-in ceremony or whatever, they asked the guys if there's anybody that want to go to Buxton, get to the head of the line. I didn't walk, I ran and got to the head of the line.
I'm sure you
and
did.
I went to Buxton. Well, I think the CC camp was in some way like the Army, yeah. We had an Army captain that was sort of in charge in some way or another. I don't remember that, but also an Army doctor named Dr. Abner. And if I could tell you a little about him, Dr. Abner, at the time there was not another doctor on the island, and he would go to people's home and do what he could to take care of them. I remember before I went in the CC camp a month or so before, I had the flu, and I don't know how he got to our house, but he came there and take care of me. And then there was a fellow lived across the road from us, and he got real sick. And my mother told me, says, go get a guy from Avon at a car to go down there and get Dr. Abner and bring him up here to tend him. And he did. The guy took him up there, and he tended to the guy the best he could. Then he took him back to the camp. Well, I think the CC camp, like I said, was somewhat like the Army. We had a barracks to sleep in, no heat or no air conditioning, and we had an Army cot, an Army blanket, and we had we wore Army type uniform both summer and winter, and we also had a mess hall where they prepared 3 meals a day for us, and the bathhouse was called like the Army had a latrine. Instead of the bathhouse, it was called a latrine where we went, and I don't remember where we had hot water or not, but anyway, here's the place where we had to go to bathe, whether there was any hot water or not. But anyway, when I first went into CC camp, they had 3 crews that worked on the outside, and there was a man by Mr. Barham was sort of in charge of them crews. And what I did with the crew I was in, we went into the north of Buxton and shoveled turf and put it in one of the trucks, and they carried it and planted it somewhere. And what the other 2 crews did, I don't remember offhand. But they had 3 crews, and one of them in charge of the crew was Calvin Meekins from Avon. Another was Charlie Gray from Buxton. Another guy was Quinn. I don't remember where he was from, and I don't remember his first name. But they were in charge of those crews that worked on the outside and did the work what had to be done. And so, as I said, I was pretty fortunate. I got to work in the carpenter shop, and they had a generator down there, and we had electric tools. And the guy that I worked for was a very smart guy. I mean, he was very capable of doing what he did, and he taught me a lot about carpentry. And we built some furniture. If you know, there's to the north of the CC camp, there's some cabins over there, and he built a lot of furniture just for those cabins. And offhand.
So those cabins, are those the ones that were on right there at Cape Point as you first go into Buxton, or?
No, they're more to the north of the CC camp. And I don't know if you ever remember a guy named Ben Dixon McNeil.
Mm-hmm,
he wrote the book, The Hatter's One.
Yes, I do.
He stayed in one of those cabins over there when he was down there writing that book, yeah.
Okay.
Could I tell you something about him?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ben Dixon McNeil. Well, he was a good friend of Leona's, my wife's parents, a very good friend to him. And ever so often, Leona's mother, Miss Omi, would take him some food to eat, or he would stop by there and eat there. He was very good friends. And I remember when I would be home from the Navy and leave, he'd be there, and he was a very interesting person to talk to. But one time he went somewhere north of Oregon, and when he came back, he brought Miss Omi a piece of pork to cook, and to cook it for him. And she said, well, when I get it done, I'll take it to you. So she did. They got it done in the evening. They carried it to him, and he was sitting in a chair, and he told Miss Omi, he says, well, put that on the table, and I'll get to eat it later on. Well, the next morning, a guy from a Coast Guard station, they went there to get his mail, where it was coming or going, and he found him dead sitting in a chair.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that's where he died, yeah. But he was a very interesting person. I remember when I'd be on my leave, I'd just make it a point to go down there and talk to him, because he was real smart, yeah. Mm-hmm. And, well, getting back to the CC camp, we, like I said, we had an Army captain that's awfully hard, but the guy named Barham was in charge of the outdoor crews, and we had a guy who had been in the Army, and every once in a while he would march us like we're in the Army doing the marches, yeah. And every once in a while we had an Army chaplain to come there to the base. So, like I say, he was basically, in some respects, like the Army.
Very much like the military,
yeah.
Just that you didn't get transferred around. It was a great idea.
Yeah.
And certainly helped the economy.
Yeah.
Helped the economy in those days. What were the requirements to get into the CCC? What were the requirements to get into the CCC?
Well, there was really nothing. We never took a physical examination, to my knowledge.
Okay.
We just, the guy Calvin Makins told us that he would go in, and so I don't know of any physical, like in the Navy, you had to get a physical and so forth, but I don't know of any physicals you had to take.
Did you have to be single?
Beg your pardon?
Did you have to be single, or could you be married?
No. There was a married men in that CC camp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's
good. I know
good.
3 or 4 married men was in that CC camp, and I'll tell you a tale about one of them. One of them lived in Salvo, and Mr. Barham said he came to him one weekend and told Mr. Barham, says, I'd like to go home for the weekend. And Mr. Barham said, well, why do you want to go home for the weekend? He said, well, he said, you know, the preacher's going to eat dinner in my house Sunday, and we're going to have chicken. I thought that was pretty
funny.
neat.
Yeah.
And then later on, after Captain Brown had stayed there for a while, we got a Navy lieutenant named Grimble, and he was a Navy lieutenant. And I'll tell you a tale I remember about him. There was a guy from Avon and his last name was Gray, but some way or another, Mr. Grimble took a liking to him. And Mr. Grimble had a small boat, and he put that boat up by the carver shop, and had this guy Gray work on it when he painted it. Well, in the Navy, or she was in the Navy, if you missed a place, they call it a holiday. So he told Billy, he says, Gray, don't forget those holidays. And Billy came into the carver shop where I was. He said, you know what? I said, what? He says, Mr. Grimble's going to give me some days off. He says, don't forget my holidays. And then one time Mr. Grimble came over to me, and I was in the carver shop, and he says, Williams, how many grandfathers does that Gray boy have? I said, well, to my knowledge, he only has one. He says, you know what? Every weekend he comes on Friday and tells me that one of his grandfathers sick and he'd like to go home for the weekend. Yeah. Well, I don't remember.
Sounded like a good excuse.
I don't remember much more about the CC camp, but we did get $30 a month.
I was going to ask you if you remembered how much they paid you.
$30 a month. They sent $22 home to your folks.
I had read they did that too, that they would give the work, the person who was employed there some, and the rest to the family.
$22 to your folks, and when they had payday, you got $8.
Yeah. Well, it really was a great thing because you got a little spending money, but you got your room and board. You didn't need much else.
$8 in for things you want to enjoy.
Yeah.
You could buy a lot. Yeah.
Back
I
in those days.
know of a family down there. A lady had 4 sons, and one of them was in the CC camp out in the mountains, and they lived on that $22 a month. Yeah. And something else, the CC camp had a baseball team, and there's 9 guys on that makes up a team. Well, four of us from Avon were on that baseball team, and we got to go to Swan Quarter, Little Washington, and places and play baseball. And you had a cousin named Ronald Gray.
Oh, yes.
Well, I tell you what they said about him. They said if he'd had training in his younger years, he could have been a professional baseball pitcher, because he could really pitch a baseball on that kidney. Yeah.
My father always said he could. My father always said that Ronald could really play ball.
He really could, yeah. That's right. Like I said, if he'd had, but we didn't have any in the athletic program in the school. We played baseball on our own, and that's about the only thing he did. So
well, this certainly was a great program. It was a great program.
Yeah.
And it really helped turn the nation around, I think, at that time. I wish there was something similar to it now for younger folks who don't have jobs.
So I went in the CC camp in 1937 and got out in 1939. Then I
so you had
joined the Navy,
in 2 years.
I was getting $30 a month in the CC camp, and I joined the Navy for 21.
Oh my gosh! So you got less in the Navy.
Yeah, $21.
Well, hopefully there were more perks. Hopefully there were more perks for you when you went into the Navy, an opportunity for advancement.
But it is said about the CC camp in Buxton that he was moved from Georgia. The CC camp was moved from Georgia to Buxton.
Okay.
Well, I remember we had several guys that was from Georgia. In fact, my supervisor in the carver shop, he was from Georgia. But the several guys from Georgia was in that CC camp at Buxton. They said they were in that CC camp at Georgia. And but I remember we had some cooks that were from Georgia. All of the cooks in there was from Georgia. And we ate a lot of grits and gravy.
Yeah. Well,
because they said that was a famous dish for people down in Georgia.
Down in the south of grits, southern grits.
Yeah.
Well, now where exactly in Buxton was the camp?
Well, the CC camp in Buxton was just about somewhere where where they moved the lighthouse to.
Oh, in that vicinity?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
All right. It's just in that vicinity, yeah. But
I wonder if any of those old cabins are still there that you mentioned earlier.
Well, I don't, to my knowledge, I don't think they were, yeah.
Probably, yeah.
But they were, I don't know, I could not tell you exactly how many men was in there, but they had enough barracks for all of us to sleep in, so there must have been quite a few in there, yeah.
So your job was, you said you moved turf?
Yeah,
You
when I
shoveled
first went
turf
in, yeah, they get turf in blocks about yay big, and they had dump trucks, and I think it was dump trucks they had, and they would load them dump trucks, and where they took it, I don't remember, you know.
Okay. I wonder if they had put it along the dune line there, maybe to help.
I really don't know.
Yeah.
But my daughter saw a documentary on the CC camp 2 or 3 mornings ago.
Oh, really?
On television, yeah. And she said that one of the things she remembered, they said the CC camp planted 3 billion trees. Of course, that was all over the United States, 3 billion trees. And he said
that
some of them, most of them are still living today, yeah.
Yeah, thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I guess cattle roamed freely and they had grazed everything down. Did President Roosevelt ever visit the work site down there that you
Not to my knowledge.
Because I had
He
read
might
that
have some himself.
sometimes.
But they, like you said, there were CC camps all over the United States. My neighbor over there had some relative, was in a CC camp in Washington State, and some time ago he sent him a brochure about that CC camp up in Washington State, and it was, I couldn't read it because my eyesight was bad, but he said his brother was in it for about, up there in Washington State, not his brother, some kin folks he had, was up there in Washington State. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I offhand I cannot remember. Like I say, 1939 was I was in the CC camp.
That's a long time back.
But I made out pretty well. I got to go home a lot because, and I spent maybe as many nights at home as I did in the CC camp. Because I was pretty fortunate.
You were close by. That's
like I said, we had the barracks to sleep in, no heat, no air conditioning, and we had an army blanket and an army cot to sleep on. Yeah.
Well,
and also something else we had, like I said, we had a Dr. Abner, had a pharmacist, and if you had some ailment, you could go to that pharmacist, and they had something we call them in the Navy, a corpsman. I don't know what they call them in the Army, but anyway, that corpsman and Dr. Abner would take care of you. But Dr. Abner, he was a smart doctor. I remember one time my father was bleeding to the nose, and they carried him down there, and he packed the nose to stop that bleeding. And Dr. Abner told who was driving the car, they'd take him to a hospital. So they carried him to a public hospital, and they said, well, we could not do anything any better than what the doctor down there did. And he said, your father's going to be, told my father he's going to be all right, yeah. But these are some of the things I remember about the CC camp.
Well, gosh, you certainly have a rich history with the CC camp, you know, just...
And something else, like I say, I was in the carpenter shop, and this other guy, my supervisor, would go up there sometimes. I don't think we went many times, 2 or 3 times, and made repairs on the lighthouse. And that's when I got to climb the lighthouse.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, there's, I guess, so much to talk about with the CC camps. I don't know any more questions to ask. Do you have anything else that you would like to add? That you recall? Were a lot of the young men on the island, did they get involved with the CC camps, or was it just not quite so many?
A lot of men. From Avon, there were 8 guys. There were 8 of us at one time was in the CC camp, 8 guys.
Okay,
and
that's
good. When they all got out, every one of us joined the service. Most of them joined the Coast Guard, but I joined the Navy, yeah. But there was 8 at one time from Avon in that CC camp, yeah.
It was pretty good training for the service. It sounds like it was very similar to the military.
Yeah.
So it was a good pre-training.
Yeah. Well, we had inspections. Every once in a while the captain would line us up on a Saturday morning, just like you do in the military, and go down the line and inspect us. Well, maybe this is egotistical, but I'll tell you about it anyway. But my mother did my laundry, and I always had nice looking uniforms on. And I remember one Saturday we had inspection, and Captain Brown had me walk up and down the line to show the men what a nice looking uniform I had. But
Well,
boy,
that's good.
did I get some bad mouthing about that, yeah.
Oh, I'll bet you did, because I know how guys can be.
Yeah.
But still, it was a good example. Your mom, took care of the laundry and did a good job with it. So, of course, they wanted to show it off. But anyway, well, if you don't have any other...
Well, they had a movie theater at Hatteras.
Yes.
And ever so often they take the guys in a truck down there to the movies, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, could I tell you something more about the mailboat?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Well, we talked about the mailboat at some length the last time you was here, but they had two mailboats, which you probably most people don't remember, but I remember they had two mailboats. And one would leave Matteo in the morning, early in the morning, and go to all the villages and drop off the mail. In the meantime, they had one at Hatteras that spent the night over there, and they would come and pick up the mail. And but I got a poem I wrote about the mailboat. Can I share my poem with you?
Yes, love to hear it.
You remember when times were hard, not a cent of money would... Well, let me first tell you how my poem got started. Years ago, I read an article in the paper or magazine or somewhere about this guy in West Virginia, and he grew up about the same time I did, and he said the only thing they had to do was go down and watch the train come in. Well, we didn't have a train, but we had a mailboat. So after that, I wrote this poem. Do you remember when times were hard, not a cent of money was to be hard, for pastime and pleasure, you went down to the land and waited for the mail come in. We didn't have a train depot where the trains would come and they would go. We never got to see a train coming around the bend. We just waited for the mailboat to come in. People would come from all around, hoping for a letter or package some first time, sit there through the rain and the wind, waiting for that mailboat to come in. And then that mailboat would come in sight, come in sight. Sometimes it'd be noon and sometimes at night. But we would meet it with a grin, hoping that mailboat would come in. Then when our life on earth is o'er and we were safe on heaven's shore, we'll sit down with all of our friends who waited so patiently for that mailboat to come in.
Oh, that's beautiful. Very nice. I'm glad you did that poem.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful, wonderful one.
I'll tell you, I've written a number of poems, and I'd like to tell you two stories about something. I'd like to quote one, but two stories of when I was at the telephone company. There was a girl that I worked in the same building I was in, and she was getting ready to go to Vietnam to get married, and I wrote her a poem. Well, I think it was either 8 or 10 years later, her husband's father died, and they gave him a Masonic funeral at the cemetery out here. Well, being a Mason, I was part of that funeral, and when I walked out to get in my car, she was in the car, sitting some distance from me. Well, when I got close to her, she got out of the car and came over there, and she first asked me how I was doing, and she said, I got something to show you. I said, what's that? And she reached down in her purse and pulled out that poem, and she says, Mr. Williams, you know what? Everywhere I have been, I have carried this poem with me. And it meant so much to me that every once in a while I'll read it. And then another time when I was at the telephone company, I was walking home for lunch one day down Ferry Street. And when I passed this one house, this lady was on the porch. And when I got abreast of her house, she says, are you Herscal Williams? I said, yes, I am. She says, well, my daughter told me if I saw you to tell you that my daughter, I got a letter from her, she's in California. And she told me to tell you that she has one of my poems out here in California.
Oh, my.
Well, let me share my poem with you, and then
Okay.
I'll be
Yes.
in the village of Avon on a January. Well, let me first tell you. I grew up in the village of Avon. I had 4 sisters and a brother, and my father was a fisherman, and in the summertime he fished at night. So some time ago I was writing a poem about my father, and I called it a tribute to my dad. So it goes like this. In the village of Avon on a January morn, the good Lord saw fit for me to be born. And the day that I came into this world, my mom and dad was glad it wasn't a girl, for they already had 4 females, and my dad needed someone who could weather a gale, for he was a fisherman all his life, and he needed someone to help him support the girls and his wife. Though God had blessed him with a son who helped my dad with the fishing some, then he was fixing to leave home and go out on the world and be on his own. So shortly after I became a lad of 10, my dad said, "Son, it's time for you to learn to fish and give me a hand." So tonight we leave at Point Lynn. We got our boat and put in our gear. It was summertime and our time of the year. And we headed that boat right out to a slough where the fish would be feeding all night through. We fished those nets time and again. And ever so often my dad would sing a hymn, for that was his kind of life, trying to make a living for the kids and his wife. Although he never made very much dough, he always caught a lot of fish, but the price was low. But he was happy just the same, because he put his trust in Jesus' name. Then one day, against his will, my dad had to put away those nets because he became ill. And I guess it's a day he really died, for when he stopped fishing, he lost his pride. Now he's up in heaven with some big fisherman, fellows like St. Peter and Andrew who lived long before him, and I bet they talk about the fish they caught up there when no battles are fought. And someday when my work is done, I plan to join them beyond setting sun, and I'll listen to all those fishermen who followed Jesus to the end.
Oh, how beautiful. So touching.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I'll tell you how my poems got started. I was on the Midway back in 1954. And so was out there for 8 months. So I wrote a poem about what life was like being on an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean Sea. Well, somebody one of my shipmates got that poem and put it on a board out there. And so I got several comments from it, and I said, well, if I can write a poem over here in the Mediterranean, I should be able to write them since. So that time I've written quite a few. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you're very talented with that. But, gosh, thank you so much. Do you have anything else you would like to add?
I appreciate you coming here. My wife, she gets after me once in a while because I can remember things that happened way back when I was growing up more so than I can recently.
Well, I think that's a gift. That's wonderful. Yeah. I wish I could remember more.
I have some pretty good memories of growing up in Avon, and I've written a book, and there I put, if I'd had my choice to be born, it would not have been in the village of Avon because there were so many things lacking. But I look back now, I'm grateful that I got to live in the village of Avon, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Your life molds you and shapes you. And
I
said your life molds and shapes you. And
yeah.
So I'm sure it's good that you were born there.
Yeah.
Well, if you have nothing else, I guess we can conclude the interview. And I thank you very much.
Yeah. Offhand, I cannot think of anything. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for all your wonderful information.
Yeah. But getting back